Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist, Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts, and this is hack number 60. We have been doing a few of these now, so hopefully you have enjoying these and getting some additional information about your retirement, thoughts and ideas and things of that nature along the way, and found a tax hack or two useful to you. What's going on, Phil? How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Loving the fall weather here. So
yeah. Can you believe we've done 60 of these?
I know it's hard to believe. It's crazy. It's good.
It's good.
Got
it's
a good library of information out there. So if
exactly.
You're just finding us, I'm sure you can find a podcast or two out there that'll be of interest to you and hopefully on target with what you're looking for.
That's true. Very true. And so you can find it all at philstaxhacks.com. Maybe you're getting this in an email blast or something from Phil. Maybe you've had a conversation and they've sent you out a little follow-up or something like that. However, or you found us through a Facebook ad or something like that. However you found us, if you haven't yet subscribed, feel free to do so on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeart, Stitcher, whatever platform. You can just type in Phil's Tax Hacks, and when it pops up, you just hit whatever they use. I think Apple uses like a little heart icon or something to subscribe to it. But basically, all you're doing with that is just getting notifications when a new one comes out. Not too much of a big deal, pretty easy to do. And you can find it all at philstaxhacks.com. You can subscribe to it on YouTube if you want to see the video version of it. Either way, audio version is just fine as well, whatever kind of floats your boat. And this week, we're going to talk about 401ks and some FAQs, some frequently asked questions. So we'll keep this one pretty short and sweet, I think, this go around. So I've got I don't know, 5 or 6 here, Phil. I'm going to toss out at you. Let us know what you think. As a CPA of 30 years, I imagine you've looked over many a 401k.
Couple of 401k statements.
Just one or two?
Yeah, just one or two.
Some of these companies over the last few years have been doing things like the free advice or the really low advice offered inside the plan that's within their employees. I always wonder about these. I've never done it myself. I feel like could it be biased? Is it not biased? Is it a good idea? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's like anything that's free, right? You got to put value based on what you're paying for it.
Sure.
Not to say that free isn't good. But don't think you're going to get a full-blown comprehensive financial plan for free.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the free that they're giving you is really kind of a ballpark, I would say, at best.
Okay.
I mean, it's a great place to start. If you've never looked at it before, hopefully it'll start to open your eyes to what the different options and some things to consider are.
Right.
And just on the last podcast, we were going through some questions and mailbag questions that have come in.
Right.
And this brings up kind of one that a lot of your statements will have on there that, based on your account, you can have X amount of retirement. So that's some of that free advice where they're kind of running this math for you in the background. Again, just be careful, understand the ins and outs. But I would say it's not, it should not be your only planning you do. It is the free planning that they give you. So,
okay, that makes sense.
But it's a great start, at least start to explore what retirement's about. What are some of the options, and am I kind of on track? So to speak.
Get you thinking about it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. 401k loans. Obviously, a lot of conversation this year with COVID and everything. They made a few minor changes to. They took it from 50,000 to up to 100,000.
100,000. Yeah.
So there's some caveats and stuff, but just in general, 401k loans, good or bad idea in your mind?
Depends on what you're using it for. I mean, it generally, it's something you got to be really careful of, right? You're borrowing from retirement. And the concept is, you're paying yourself back, which is true. I mean, whatever the interest rate is in there, you are paying it back into your 401k account, so you're earning money back that way versus being invested. But I mean, if the markets were good, maybe you would have done better, maybe not. The biggest concern with 401k loans you've got to be really careful of is if you're in the middle of that loan and terminate employment either by your will or not, that 401k loan, if not paid back, becomes a distribution.
Yeah.
And that's where they become really dangerous is that, if you, under this COVID scenario, took out a $100,000 loan because you thought it was a great idea and you were going to do something different with it, but now your employment that was furloughed, it becomes a permanent layoff, and you don't have that $100,000 to put back in to pay it back. Now you're going to have $100,000 taxable distribution. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I go very carefully down that road. I would say it's not the first option, but it is an option to look at.
Yeah.
Just understanding the pros and cons.
I hear a lot of advisors say it's not necessarily a bad idea or a good idea, but it should be way down on the totem pole of things to look at. There's other things to do first, just for some of those reasons you just gave out. So, all right. So moving right along here on these FAQs, 401k rollovers. When does a rollover make sense and when does it not?
It really kind of depends on your scenario. The times that it absolutely, to me, makes sense is if you've left that former, that employer, now a former employer, and you've got a 401k or two out there with those types of employers, probably makes sense to consolidate those together and get them under an IRA. It's a non-taxable event to do that, so you're not paying tax to move it out of the 401k into an IRA.
Right.
And now makes it easier to manage because it's in one place. Oftentimes when we're working with those that are in or nearing retirement, we'll also do what's called an in-service distribution. That's an option you might have in your plan that allows you to take money out of a 401k for an employer you're currently at and reposition it into an IRA. The main reason to look at that is that you have more investment options typically outside of the 401k than what you would have in.
Okay.
So when does it not make sense? I mean, if you have a lot of investment options, kind of a broad range of investment options, and they meet your needs inside that 401k, it might not make sense to move it out. So you really have to look at pros and cons. Fees, understand truly the fees in that 401k versus the fees out. But fees are one piece of the equation too, because usually options available outside the 401k are much broader. You've got more options than you would have inside. So.
Well, we hear that a lot of times too. People will say, well, 401k is great. It's a great vehicle to kind of get you going, but it is fairly limited a lot of times. And again, every company plan is different, but making sure that you, I guess thinking about doing a rollover and putting in an IRA just gives you a bigger plethora of things to choose from. So
correct. Yeah, you have more options to potentially meet specifically what you want to do with that money, where you're positioning it in your plan. So and some company plans can be pretty narrow. So certainly something to think about. Target date. Just understanding your whole plan, because some plans actually, when you terminate service, they limit investment options. You really have to understand how it works. So
and I don't think it's usually a good idea to leave any orphan 401ks behind anyway when you move on to someplace else, and it happens a lot. So don't feel bad if you did it, but just maybe do something about it. All right, target date funds. So pretty easy. They've become I would think they've become pretty much the staple that people do because it's just easy, especially if you're younger. And you take a job, or even if you're, in your 30s or even your 40s and you transfer to a new job, it's like, let me just pick the 2040 fund because that's, I do the math. That's when I'm going to retire roughly, and that just makes it easy.
And a lot of the plans have that as kind of their default option. So, if you sign up and didn't pick an allocation, that's where they put you. Based on your age, they're going to put you in certain target dates.
Which is great because at least it's helping you do something.
Right. At least you're doing something. It's not sitting in cash or, whatever the case is. So, target date funds are like anything easy, there's pros and cons, right? It's a very easy solution. And the whole idea behind it is that, it becomes more conservative as you approach that date.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest drawbacks to the target date fund, I think, is that, for instance, somebody retiring this year, if they put it in a 2020 fund, the reality is most people think it's much more conservative on that target date than it really is.
It's 50-50, like the lowest they go.
You're 50-50. You're actually probably closer to 60-40, 60% stock, 40% bond.
Right, which is pretty
close to that date.
You may not want to.
So that's kind of a moderate allocation, which that might be fine for you, but just understand it's not a bond allocation on that target date. It's not moving 100% to conservative.
Yeah, I think the misnomer is that we think, oh well, I've heard that the target date funds, they're easy to do. I can just pick it, I can set it and forget it. And each year I get closer, they come down in risk. In theory, sure, but it's
And it is
really,
true.
really
Yeah.
small year to
Yes.
year. And then they never really drop. So it's not like you get to your point. Oh, I'm retiring this year and it's 2020. I'm probably at like 10%, at risk and 90% in safe, and it's just not the case.
And that's not the case, and you're not going to be that way in a target date fund. So,
so bear that in mind.
Again, just understanding, how you position it, and again, from a personal preference standpoint, I don't like them because everything's in one pooled investment, right? We like to segregate risk, so that's why we set up the buckets and have low, no risk assets for a soon bucket, later bucket, higher risk.
Right.
So we can segregate and position risk where in a target date you really can't. It's all blended in together in one fund. So
sure. Contribution amounts. Should you just contribute enough to max out? So like if you need to put in 3% or whatever to get the company's 3%, or do you, try to, max it out each year? Everybody's savings is a little bit different, but I think I would think at the minimum, you got to take the free money.
Absolutely. So, at least go up to that match. That's free money. You can't do better than that. It's 100% return guaranteed, or 50% or whatever your company match, however it works, but at least get the free money. Going beyond that, it really depends on how much you're wanting to save and what other options you have. And there's pros and cons of putting money in the 401k. Probably the biggest disadvantage is, especially if you're still employed there and you're under 59 and a half, once the money's in the plan, you can't get money back out if you needed it, unless the plan offers like a loan option or something like that. So you have to understand pros and cons, and whether it fits.
And then our final one, Phil, is the Roth versus traditional. We talked not too long ago about the underutilization of the Roth. Some reports and some information to come out, some statistics that a really low percentage of people taking advantage of the Roth if it's offered to them. What's your take on the two? There's benefits both ways, but how do you feel in general about it?
Yes, a Roth is a great option in a 401k because it gives you a much larger amount you can put in. If it's just a Roth IRA, you're limited to 6,000 or 7,000, depending upon what your age is.
Right.
If you're over 50, it's the 7. But if it's in a 401k, it's a lot higher limit. It's the full 401k deferral limit. Oh, okay. So, and that can be split between Roth and or traditional. Right. So which one is best for you? It really depends on your scenario. The whole idea behind a Roth is you're paying tax on that seed first because it's after tax money that's gone in, you pay tax on it, but now all the growth is tax free.
You know what the tax rates are now, so you're paying it now.
Yep, so you pay it now on a very known rate today, and all the growth becomes tax free. So if you're younger, to me it makes a lot of sense for sure to go to the Roth.
It almost feels like a no-brainer if you're younger to be doing a Roth. Yeah.
Right, because you have a lot of time for that money to compound tax free.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that if you're kind of near retirement that a Roth contribution isn't right at that stage, but it may or may not be. You have to run the math. A lot of times, even though a Roth is available at that stage, it might make sense to continue doing traditional because if you're in a higher tax bracket now, you're in the later years of your career, making probably your peak earnings, you're going to save or defer more taxes today at that rate. Versus once you hit retirement. But you have to kind of project that money or that number going forward to see what tax rates am I going to be in retirement. So much like any of these, there's no hard and fast rule of this is what you need to do.
Right.
It's understanding what does your tax picture look like today? What does it look like as you get into early retirement and then later on? Because the downside of traditional is all you're doing is deferring that tax liability. And once you hit 72, your required minimum distribution age, money's going to have to start coming out whether you need it or not.
Yep.
So
maybe a big old tax bomb waiting. Well, and that's the whole point.
And unfortunately it is. Yeah. A lot of times.
Waiting. Yeah. So, if you've got some frequently asked questions or just questions, I shouldn't say frequently asked. That's why we did them. But if you've got some questions about your 401k, reach out to a qualified professional like Phil, give him a jingle. You can find the number there on the screen, or you can just call 248-888-7530. and sit down and have a conversation about your retirement plan or lack thereof if you don't have one, or even just your investing plan. Phil works with people of all ages, so you don't have to be necessarily moving into retirement. We've got younger folks as well that reach out to him. So give him a call, have a conversation. Go to philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. You can find it all there. And we'll wrap it up this week with that. Any questions you have, feel free to send us an email, subscribe to the show, give us a call, whatever the case is. Phil's here to help, and of course he services the Metro Detroit area. So, but he has clients in other places too. So again, doesn't really necessarily mean anything in today's world.
Zoom's a great thing.
That's what we're on right now. So all over the country. So we'll see you next time, folks. Stay safe and sane. We appreciate your time on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.